Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, why did I let that get to me? Why am I carrying someone else's energy like it's mine? You're not alone. And the truth is, there's a way to live, to move, where people no longer have that kind of access to your peace. Not because you stop caring, but because you start choosing what gets to enter your world. This isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming clear. And once you see the shift I'm about to share, you won't unsee it. So stay with me. Each part of this message builds into the next, like stepping stones. If you skip one, you might miss the one that would have unlocked the peace you've been searching for. If this feels like the kind of space your soul's been craving, go ahead and subscribe. We're not here for the noise. We're here for the quiet strength beneath it. I used to think anger was a flaw. Then I thought it was a reaction I could fix. But what I learned through Stoicism, mindfulness, and some real internal wrestling is this. Anger isn't the enemy, attachment is. And when we loosen our grip, we stop handing out access to our inner peace like it's a free sample. Stick with me, because the last truth we'll explore changed everything about how I relate to people, even the ones who used to trigger me most. There's a quiet kind of strength that doesn't need to fight, doesn't rush to defend, doesn't crumble when someone misunderstands you. It's not passive, it's powerful. And once you learn how to live from that place, you stop letting people steal your peace because you've stopped giving them access to it. If you've ever thought, I just want to stop letting people get to me, then stay with me. Because these signs, they're not just reflections of Stoic wisdom. They're mile markers on the path back to yourself. Let's begin. Sign 1. You no longer feel the urge to prove your point. You used to stay up at night, replaying conversations in your head, what you could have said differently, how you could have explained it better. And not because you were trying to argue. You just wanted to be understood. You wanted someone to see you, to really get what you were trying to say, and to finally say, oh, now I understand you. But what you didn't realize then was how much of your peace you were sacrificing for that one sentence. You'd over-explain, reword things 3 or 4 different ways. You'd send long texts trying to clarify what you meant. You'd second-guess your tone, your delivery, your timing, all in the hope that the message would finally land. But over time, something shifted, slowly, quietly. You started realizing that some people aren't trying to understand you. They're trying to stay comfortable in their perception of you. And no matter how well you explain yourself, it won't reach them because they're not really listening. That's when the exhaustion began to wear on your spirit, because it wasn't just about the words. It was the energy behind them, the constant striving, the quiet pleading underneath it all. Please see me. Please know I meant well. Please don't get it wrong. But now you speak less, but with more weight. You say what's true without trying to twist it into something they'll accept. You say it once and you let it stand. Because here's the truth. Peace and proof rarely live in the same place. The more you chase validation, the further you drift from your center. You've realized that your job isn't to convince the world of your intentions. It's to stay rooted in them. When someone misjudges you now, you feel a twinge, yes, but it doesn't throw you off balance. You no longer scramble to defend every angle. You let their misunderstanding pass like a wave, because you know who you are, and that knowing has become your home. There's a kind of freedom in that, in not needing to win the narrative, not needing to be liked or agreed with or even believed. That's not silence. That's not passivity. That's power. The power of being aligned with yourself whether anyone else understands you or not. So if you've stopped feeling the urge to explain yourself to everyone, to prove your goodness, your logic, your heart, don't mistake that as indifference. It's growth, it's clarity, it's the beginning of deep, unwavering self-respect. And the irony, the moment you stop trying to be understood is often the moment you finally are, by the people who actually matter. But the next sign peeled back something even more interesting. Sign 2, you start creating space instead of seeking closure. There was a time when silence felt unbearable, the kind of silence that made your chest tighten. The pause after an argument, the text that never came, the drifting away of someone who once felt close. You used to sit with that silence like it was a puzzle you were supposed to solve. You needed to talk, to explain, to understand. You needed the conversation, the closure, that one last exchange that would tie it all together in a neat emotional bow. And if it didn't come, you'd go after it. You'd reach out, revisit, reopen the wound just to try and clean it properly. Because in your heart, you believed healing had to come through resolution. That clarity required both sides. That walking away without the final word meant something was incomplete. But then something in you began to shift. Not out of bitterness, not because you stopped caring, but because you got tired. Tired of handing over your peace for conversations that only spun in circles. Tired of trying to dig closure out of someone who never held it in the first place? Tired of thinking you needed someone else's explanation in order to move forward? So you began to do something quietly radical. You stopped chasing closure and started creating space. Space for your emotions to settle without being interrupted. Space between you and people who only knew how to speak in half-truths and sharp exits. Space for your nervous system to exhale. Finally, you realize that not every silence has to be filled. Not every loose end has to be tied. Not every relationship deserves a clean goodbye. Some goodbyes happen in the middle of conversations that never finished. And that's okay, because you've come to understand something deeper. Clarity doesn't always come from conversation. Sometimes it comes from stepping away. There's wisdom in choosing distance over engagement, power in knowing that your peace is more important than someone else's response. It doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've grown up. It means you've learned to protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. You don't need to know why they left, why they changed, or why they didn't treat you the way you hoped. You don't need to press for the final word, or the clean ending, or the satisfying explanation. Because now you're not seeking closure, you're choosing clarity. And clarity sometimes sounds like silence, like space, like letting go without needing to slam the door. You no longer chase, you choose. You choose peace over answers, self-respect over re-engagement, presence over replaying the past. And that choice, that quiet, sacred internal choice, is the beginning of a different kind of freedom. This next one revealed something deeper I didn't even realize I was carrying. Sign 3, you're no longer offended by who someone couldn't be. It used to cut deep when someone didn't show up for you, didn't check in, didn't apologize, didn't fight for you the way you would have fought for them. You'd lie awake replaying the moments. What you said, what they didn't. Wondering if maybe you asked for too much, or were somehow too much. You kept hoping they'd change, that they'd finally understand you, that they'd realize what they had before it was too late. And when they didn't, when they stayed distant or inconsistent or incapable of holding the space your heart needed, it felt personal. like rejection, like proof that maybe you were unlovable in the exact way you most needed love. But now, something in you has softened and sharpened all at once. You've stopped confusing someone's emotional limitations with your value. You see it clearly now. They couldn't give you what you needed, not because you were asking for too much, but because it was never in them to give. You stop expecting fruit from a tree that's never borne any. You stop begging for language from someone who never learned how to speak in honesty or care. And instead of trying to change them, you start grieving the version of them you built in your head. The version who showed up consistently, listened deeply, loved you the way you love, because that version never really existed. And your healing began the moment you let that version go. You're no longer offended by what someone couldn't be. You're no longer holding on to potential like it's a promise. You're not bitter. You're not even angry. You're just awake now. Awake to their capacity. Awake to your worth. Awake to the truth that not everyone is meant to walk with you. And that doesn't diminish the road you're on. You've realized that some people operate from wounds they've never acknowledged, some from emotional patterns they never chose to break, some simply from fear or avoidance or fragility. And none of that is a reflection of your deservingness. You've learned to stop personalizing someone's absence, because often their silence, their inconsistency, their inability to be who you needed says more about what's unfinished in them than what's broken in you. And the beauty is this: when you stop being offended by someone's limits, you start honoring your own. You honor your need for reciprocity, your need for safety, your right to walk away from people who leave you guessing or gasping for basic respect. You no longer stay out of hope. You stay or leave from clarity. You give people the dignity of being who they really are. And you give yourself the freedom to choose whether that's enough. And then came the sign that taught me where real power lives. Sign 4, you notice the gap between trigger and reaction getting wider. There was a time when your reactions were almost automatic. Someone said something that stung, and before your brain could even catch up, your mouth had already answered back. Your heart rate had already spiked. Your day was already hijacked. You'd walk away after, shaking your head. Why did I say that? Why did I let them get to me again? You weren't weak. You were just wired. Wired to defend, to prove, to protect yourself. It was survival. Old patterns built from pain, or past relationships, or even childhood moments you never got to fully understand. But now, there's space, not a huge dramatic pause, just a subtle gap, a beat, a breath. Someone makes a sarcastic comment. They try to provoke, or dismiss, or dominate the energy in the room. But instead of meeting that fire with fire, you stay still inside. Not frozen, just aware. You don't bite back. You don't chase their low energy with your high emotional cost. You notice. You notice what's being said, but more importantly, you notice yourself. Your heartbeat stays steady. Your voice doesn't rise. And if it does, you catch it. You don't shame yourself. You simply return to breath, to presence, to the deeper knowing that not every moment needs your reaction to be valid. And in that space between stimulus and response, that little stretch of awareness, you reclaim something that used to slip through your fingers, your power. Because mastery has nothing to do with being untouchable or stoic in the cold, distant sense. It's not about silencing emotion. It's about owning it, guiding it, letting it move through you, not rule you. You realize that not every comment deserves a comeback. Not every trigger deserves your energy. Not every person deserves your peace. You learn to spot what's real and what's a projection. You begin to ask yourself quietly, is this really about me? Or are they leaking something they haven't healed? And suddenly you don't feel so personally attacked. You feel separate, not in a disconnected way, but in a liberated one. You start moving through life like a calm sea. Yes, the winds blow. Yes, the waves come. But your anchor? It holds. You hold yourself. And here's the wild thing. People start noticing, not because you're louder, but because you're not. Your energy says, I see what you're doing, and I choose peace anyway. This is the kind of growth that happens quietly. There's no applause, no big announcement, just a steady strength you carry with you into every room, every conversation, every challenge. And when someone tries to shake you, you smile, because you know now, that moment, that pause, that breath, was the difference between old you and the version you've worked so hard to become. And the next sign? It was quieter, but in many ways even more freeing. Sign 5. You feel compassion for people who try to hurt you. There was a time when someone's cruelty would send you spiraling. They'd throw the jab, say the passive-aggressive thing, roll their eyes when you spoke, and instantly your walls would rise. You'd go cold, retreat, or worse, plot how to get even. Not out loud maybe, but inside, you wanted them to feel what you felt, to see what they'd done, to pay for how small they tried to make you feel. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. You started to really see people, not just the mask they wear, but the wounds underneath. You noticed the anger wasn't personal. It was pain, a defense, a scream from someone who never learned to whisper their hurt. You started to ask different questions. What happened to them? What are they carrying that I can't see? And the more you looked with your heart, not just your hurt, the more the game changed. Because now when someone lashes out, you don't take the bait, you don't match the energy, you observe it and choose differently. You begin to understand, people only throw what's overflowing in them. If it's kindness, they throw that. If it's chaos, they hurl that too. So when they try to cut you with words, you no longer reach for sharper blades. You hold your ground with grace. You let your light, not your wounds, do the speaking. It doesn't mean you excuse the behavior. You still hold boundaries. You still walk away when respect is absent. But you walk away calm, not craving revenge. And that's power, because the person who remains soft in a hard world, who refuses to mirror cruelty, who can hold firm while staying kind, that's the person who becomes untouchable. Not because they're invincible, but because they've seen too much to be shaken by projections. You begin to feel something strange when someone tries to hurt you. Not hatred, not even indifference, but compassion. You see the child in them, the broken trust, the swallowed scream that turned into rage. And instead of absorbing it, you bless it silently and keep walking. There's a saying that goes, hurt people, but healed people, they see the hurt and they don't add to it. They stop the cycle. They become the interruption. And that's what you've become, not by accident, but by deep soul-shifting choice. It's not weakness, it's maturity. It's strength with an open hand instead of a closed fist. Because forgiveness is not about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself from the grip of someone else's pain. And when you can feel compassion without stepping back into the fire, that's when you know you've finally reclaimed your peace. But it was the final sign, the quietest of them all. That brought me the clearest peace I'd ever felt. Sign 6. You realize peace doesn't come from controlling others, but from mastering yourself. There was a time when you thought peace was something you could grasp by controlling the outside world. You believed if you could just get others to behave right, to respect your boundaries perfectly, to say the things you wanted to hear, to never cross the lines you drew, then you'd finally feel safe. You tried to manage it all, their words, their actions, even their moods. You held tight to expectations, schedules, and outcomes, convinced that if you just pulled the right strings, your world would stop shaking. But peace, you learned, the kind that doesn't vanish when the phone rings or a text blindsides you. Peace doesn't come from managing others. It comes from mastering yourself. This shift didn't happen overnight. It was subtle, a quiet unraveling of an old belief that your calm could live only in a perfectly controlled environment. Instead, you began to see that the world doesn't adjust to your comfort. It never will. People will say things you don't expect. Plans will change without warning. Life will throw its curveballs, often when you least want them. And here's the hard, beautiful truth. You can't stop that. But what you can do is choose how you respond. You start to notice a new kind of power. The power to release what doesn't serve you, to let go of the weight you've carried for years, grudges, judgments, the need to control the uncontrollable. Your peace flows from this choice. It flows from the space you create inside yourself. That quiet place that no one else can touch unless you invite them in. It's not about shutting down your emotions or pretending everything is fine. No, it's the opposite. It's about opening your heart wide enough to feel fully and strong enough to not be swept away. This is the Stoic way. It's not cold or distant, as some might think. It's steady, clear, unshakable. You realize peace isn't something to be found in external approval or control. It's something you cultivate in the way you hold yourself through life's storms. You learn that your value, your calm, your light, none of that depends on what others do or say. It depends entirely on how you master your own inner world. And when you reach that place, no one else can hold your peace hostage. No harsh word, no betrayal, no chaos around you can steal it. You become the guardian of your own calm. And in that sacred space, you find freedom. Not because the world changed, but because you did. So if you've ever wondered, how do I stop letting them get to me? Maybe the answer isn't about them at all. Maybe it's about you. Returning to the stillness that was never lost, only buried. Choosing clarity over chaos. Response over reaction. Peace over performance. And becoming someone no one can shake. If something here spoke to you, drop a comment. Let me know which sign echoed most in your own life. And if you're on this journey of reclaiming your peace, protecting your power, and embodying stillness, subscribe. Because the Stoic's Stoic is your space to breathe, to think, to return. We're not here to escape the noise. We're here to rise above it, and I'll walk with you.